Welcome to the Mindset Lady. Today, I'm unrevealing a fact. What is the most important thing in a relationship? Of course, love, respect, trust, we know that. But something that we keep ignoring, and I think it's one of the most important elements in a relationship, is vulnerability. We need to learn how to be vulnerable to each other. How are we avoiding vulnerability in our relationship, and how is this affecting our relationship? I will talk about that. And finally, I will also give you some tips on how to become more vulnerable, how to create stronger bonds with our partners, and when to do that, because timing is everything. There are 4 ways a partner can avoid being vulnerable. The first one is not talking about their weaknesses or the things that they consider being a weakness. I will give examples in a second. Number 2 is not talking about the past. Number 3 is not talking about emotions at all. And number 4 is not being able to get naked in front of their partner. Literally. Maybe there is a problem in the frequency of their intimacy, or maybe they turn off the lights all the time. We will talk about that later. So weakness could be, for example, you couldn't finish your school. Maybe you started businesses and all of them failed. Maybe you had a very traumatic childhood. Maybe you have always been in debt and you had been paying loans all of your life. And this is a weakness for you. Maybe you had too many failed relationships. Maybe you were cheated on. Maybe you grew up in a poor family. Or maybe you have been poor and you have been working 3 jobs a day. These things might be difficult to talk about for some, because when they talk about it, it becomes more real because they keep hiding it even from themselves. And when they verbalize it, suddenly it becomes real, and they're afraid that their partner is not gonna think about them well. Well, if you don't love yourself or your weaknesses, then of course you expect your partner to not to like them either. For some people, it is even more difficult to talk about the past, whether it be good or bad. For example, childhood times or teenager years or university years. Like your partner might say, past is past. Why are we talking about this? Or maybe you want to talk about their trips, to Europe or other cities. Like you want to see pictures, you want to look at some photos. Even if they were married before, maybe had kids before, maybe you want to see pictures of those and your partner says no. Or they don't say no, but they don't seem very interested in doing that either. The third one I mentioned was avoiding talking about emotions. Especially with men, this is very difficult because they have been raised in a way that, hush, don't talk about your feelings, don't show your feelings, don't cry, men don't cry, or you need to look stronger, you should take care of your sisters, and those kind of things. When they grow up, they have difficulty in explaining how they feel, what they feel, or even showing those become a weakness for them. So this is why in relationships, when we cannot show or talk about our feelings, then a bond between partners is not created very strongly. Because as an example, I don't want to generalize things, but let's say a woman partner wants to talk about her emotions and wants to hear about her partner's emotions, but her partner seems to not to like talking about her emotions. Maybe first time, second time, it's okay, but if this keeps happening, then unfortunately, this couple will be drifted apart, because we need to be able to show or talk about our emotions freely and frequently in our long-term relationships, serious relationships. Another thing about talking about emotions, there are 2 sentences that some people keep avoiding, which they shouldn't. I'm sorry and thank you. Some people think that when they say I'm sorry, they're gonna accept that they are faulty and they're flawed, which they feel anyway deep down there. And accepting this fact almost feels like they're gonna lose that relationship. They are gonna lose that partner, and they don't want to. And they don't want to accept that they are flawed. When they say thank you, they're gonna acknowledge that the other person did something good for them, and they're afraid to lose that partner, so they avoid saying thank you. If they don't have the safe attachment type, with the partner, but instead they have some anxious type of attachment, then unfortunately saying thank you and saying I'm sorry will be extra difficult for these people. And finally, I want to talk about being naked in front of our partners. As you know, sex life is very important in a relationship. Intimacy is very, very important, because when you get intimate with each other, you tell the other person, hey, I'm naked, I'm in front of you with all my flaws, with all the things that I don't like about my body, and you are one of the few people who saw me like that because I trust you. And that creates an automatic bond with your loved one. And then of course, during the intimacy, your hormones and everything starts to create another bond. So not that you only have pleasure, but also you build another bond there. But if you're avoiding intimacy just because you don't want to be seen, then you are affecting that relationship badly. If you're turning off the lights all the time, if you're avoiding sex altogether, or you're saying no most of the time because you're afraid that your partner is going to see you, then you might be preventing your partner to get even deeper with you in a whole new level. In these kind of situations, the partner who wants to get intimate kind of bounces back from a wall, and if that partner keeps hitting the same wall over and over again, unfortunately, this relationship is destined to end. When to talk about what is the key, I think. Because I think in the flirting times, the first a few months probably, wouldn't be a good time to talk about deep stuff, right? For example, it's your first date and you talk about your childhood traumas is not perfect, because that person doesn't know you yet. They don't know how to read this information. The only way they can process this information is by their past experiences, and you don't know their experiences. If they had very bad experiences about what you're telling them, it might click some point that you don't even know. They might misunderstand you. They might misread this information, because the only reference they can get is their own experiences, and they might lack that kind of experience and they don't know where to put that information. Then suddenly they might act like standoffish, and you don't want to lose that person, right? You want to get to know that person, and you want that person to get to know you, but on a very basic level. What colors do you like? What do you want to eat? What are your, career goals? And talking about present and future mostly. But once you get closer, once you get to an intimate level and you start to see that your partner starts to share things about themselves, then it might be a good time you do the same. Because in a relationship, if a partner keeps talking about emotions or their past or maybe their weaknesses, and you keep your silence, then that is not going to work out, at least in a long term. You need to get also vulnerable. You need to also talk about your vulnerabilities. But again, you need to be a little bit picky here. For example, you need to look at your partner's past traumas, or maybe, let's say, fears. Because if your partner, let's say, has been cheated on before, and that's a big deal for her, and you cheated on someone in your past, well, maybe it's the past, you're not that person anymore, but your partner is pretty new, she's still getting to know you, and if you say something like this, she might not get over it, and that fear inside of her might take over, and they could stop seeing you. So in order to talk about these important things, you need to know exactly when and how you should give this information to your partner. And sometimes, let's be honest, you don't have to say everything. You don't have to talk about everything in your past, every little, weakness that you have. You can pick and choose, but at least you need to talk about some. You need to get vulnerable to your partner. This is the key point, because without being vulnerable to each other, without having deep conversations with each other, your relationship will be always on the surface level. How was your work today? Good, honey. Are we going on vacation? Yes, let's go here. Let's invite friends. Okay, let's have dinner. Blah, blah, blah. That's it. this kind of relationship unfortunately has a short shelf life. So what are we going to do? We are going to get into our relationship, get to know each other first, and once we are getting more serious and more intimate, then we can start talking about our emotions, our past, our weaknesses maybe if you want to, and start to say I'm sorry or thank you. You know, we wouldn't be afraid of talking about these things. We wouldn't be afraid to get naked in front of our partner, and you will start to see that same thing is coming from your partner also. If you see that it's not happening, then that might be a red flag. As they open to you more, as you open to them more, a new and stronger bond will be created between you guys. Trust me. Please share in the comments if you agree or disagree, or if you have any other opinions about getting vulnerable to each other. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next video next week. Bye.